have such sights to show you.
We're Poppin the Scary horror podcast here. I'm your host Coale, and with me as always I have my good friend and co-host Aaron.
Hi!
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Well, I am super excited. I don't know about you that it's finally October.
Yeah.
I'm super excited. It's easily my favorite month of the year because everything's starting to get cooler. It's more socially acceptable to put tombstones in your art. It's a great time.
Yeah, man, this is I gotta imagine it's great for people that are trying to, rent out cemeteries and build houses on cemeteries and host parties in cemeteries.
There's a cemetery market that is...
It's booming right now.
Yes, it's booming.
And that's exactly what we need in our economy. So, just candy sales are up, happiness is up, death is up, and it's a good thing this month.
Absolutely, man.
It's all reason to celebrate.
Absolutely. And so I think it's very fitting that with the movie we're talking about today is actually focusing on one of the most classic examples of cemetery lurkers and inhabitants, but it's zombies.
Yeah.
So I will give this preface for people that didn't watch the previous episode, which I highly implore you to watch because I'm definitely biased, but it's definitely my favorite, especially having Dave Dr. Schockbecker, my favorite podcaster, on there. But
if you can't watch it, at least listen to it.
Yeah. At least say you were there. Get the T-shirt saying I was there for the 1-year anniversary of Poppin the Scary horror podcast. And definitely, especially big thanks to Dave for promoting our episode on Land of the Creeps and Jay of the Dead's new horror podcast. So major big thank you to him. But he was actually the one to choose the movie for us today. Yeah. And I was kind of surprised because, again, I know a lot of his favorite horror movies and stuff. So I was kind of prepared for any of that stuff. So whenever he had chosen for us to watch Dawn of the Dead, and not only that, but the remake, it definitely caught me on the left side, there. Just totally came out of left field there. Wasn't expecting it, but I'm really excited that I had no idea what to expect there. Because in all honesty, I have seen the original Dawn of the Dead, and I know that's a lot of people's favorite George A. Romero film. It's either that or the original Night of the Living Dead. And, probably a hot take and maybe one that I'll end up regretting if I revisit it later. But watching Dawn of the Dead, hearing so much acclamation and praise for it, I went into it and I was like, okay, yep, that was a zombie movie. So with that being said, whenever he had chosen Dawn of the Dead and he had said it was a remake, I'm like, I don't think there's a remake of Dawn of the Dead in the back of my head. But whenever you guessed it and he confirmed, I'm like, oh, there is. And he was talking on, and then it just suddenly clicked. I'm like, yes, I remember seeing that now. So that was pretty crazy for me, especially since it has Zack Snyder directing, which he's a director that I'm very mixed on. I feel like he's had some really good stuff he's put out there and some stuff not so much there. But the one highlight that I'm really anticipating is James Gunn being one of the writers, because he has written for a lot of films that I've liked a ton. Of course, he's done well in Guardians of the Galaxy. I loved his Scooby-Doo movie as a kid. And then The Suicide Squad is just my favorite superhero film of all time, if not just one of my favorite films, period. So I'm really curious about this. I don't know about you and what your experience is with the Night of the Living Dead or zombies or whatevs.
Yeah. I've never honestly seen any of the classic zombie movies. No Dawns of the Deads or Night of the Living Deads or whatever number of days later's. I've seen I Am Legend. That's the one zombie movie I can claim, and I've played Left 4 Dead. And, I've seen Shaun of the Dead too. Those are all the Deads in my catalog. So it'll be cool to kind of go back. Even though this is a remake, it'll be cool to kind of go back to like, one of the more original concepts for the Dead coming back to life.
Yeah, I'm really curious because, like, this came out in 2004, and obviously, we're close to the same age, and so there was, like, a real big rise in zombie popularity, I feel like, whenever we were going to middle and high school, because I remember, like, my friend and I, we would talk about zombie apocalypse scenarios, and again, the game Left 4 Dead definitely funneled into it, but I think also The Walking Dead TV show, whenever that was coming out.
I think probably the combination of The Walking Dead and then, like, zombie mode and, Call of Duty and slash, just all the first-person shooter zombie games that kind of flooded at the time. I feel like both of those really added to the popularity of zombie stuff.
Yeah, it was crazy to go through that time where zombies were really a huge thing. I mean, it was just one of those things. It was super popular. Like, one of the most popular books I saw a lot of students have was, like, the survival hand guide to the zombie apocalypse That was a really popular one there. And then I kind of went through zombie fatigue later on because, again, there was so much of it. But now I feel like it's kind of simmered back down again there. And so I'm genuinely kind of curious about how this film's going to go, because I know Dave, he knows hundreds and hundreds of horror films that he could have recommended, and so for him to recommend this one to us makes me curious as to why he did it. Assumingly it's going to be fairly good or entertaining. I don't think he would totally troll us by throwing a stinker film towards us.
But I mean, this is also worth noting. I mean, this is obviously the first zombie film we've watched on the podcast. We've been here, we're doing it for over a year now, and haven't seen a good old zombie film. So it'll be great to add to our pantheon.
Absolutely, and definitely it's going to be a good one for the books, so y'all sit tight now, you hear, because we're going to go watch Dawn of the Dead, the 2004 remake.
Woo!
I don't know why I went southern there, but boy golly gee, I sure did.
You rooted too!
And we have just returned from watching Dawn of the Dead from 2004. Aaron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a 2004 movie, for sure.
Yeah, I think this film, out of any of the films we have talked about on this podcast, has garnered the most live actions from both of us, because usually like you'll hear like we'll feel like one of ourselves jump or give like a giggle and stuff, but I think by far there was times where we're both rolling on the couch just trying to take in what was going on screen. So
both in like in a horror sense where there's some pretty gruesome scenes where we were like, whoa, what the fuck, and also in like a funny sense, like what the fuck were they going for there, or why did they do that, so there was a lot of it was definitely a physical experience for us watching it.
Yeah, definitely, which I would like. Again, I kind of went in with a blank slate, just not really anticipating anything, and while I think some stuff is predictable, there's certainly a lot of other stuff I would have never predicted in a billion years ever occurring on screen.
That's true, yeah.
So that's our initial thoughts. Let's jump into that plot there. So basically, the plot, I'm sure may shock most of you who haven't even seen the film, but it focuses on the outbreak of the zombie apocalypse. I know, super shocking. People would have never guessed that something like that would happen in this film. And so our main protagonist runs out after finding out that the zombie apocalypse has broken out, played by Sarah Polley. And she ends up finding another group of survivors as they make their way to take shelter in a mall. So very much a similar situation as it was with the original there. And pretty much from there inside the mall, they try to strategize and plan and cope with what is going on and what they're going to do next. And pretty much we're just buckled in for the ride the entire way through.
Yeah.
I mean, plot-wise, I thought the plot was perfectly fine. Like, kind of the story they wanted to tell. Like I said, comparing it to the first film, again, this has like been over 10 years ago since I've last seen it, so I may need to like refresh myself with the original film, but I mean, it pretty much delivered on the plot, just survivors hanging out in a mall trying to figure out what to do next.
Right.
And
this movie didn't. I know some movies like to focus on like, well, what caused the apocalypse, and is there a cure? And this one's this one's pretty standard. There's zombies. You got to deal with them. That's the whole plot.
Yeah, which I think it's definitely good, because I feel like sometimes like not knowing is better than them trying to explain like what caused it. It's just doesn't matter. The outbreak's here now. Now we have to deal with it. Especially
for a movie like this that wasn't necessarily going for depth in that area. It's just like, you guys want to see zombies. Here's the zombies,
So I think whenever it comes to plot, like pretty much storyline, I feel like it's just straightforward and stuff. Now, whenever it comes to characters' decisions and stuff, that's surprisingly one of the biggest elements to horror films, is the characters' choices that lead to certain consequences.
Right. And that really drives where their destinations are, the change of scene and stuff. They make the active decision to go to the mall. They make the active decision to change location later. And even within the mall stratosphere they find themselves in, there's a bunch of decisions being made, whether to face the zombies and reach something maybe greater, or to buckle down and deal with the tension between the characters.
Yeah, so I feel like whenever it comes to just comparing this to other films in the zombie world, there's really nothing too much I could praise about it, but there's nothing too much I could condemn about it, because again, it's just very straightforward. It's kind of like slasher films. There's a slasher going around killing people, boom, there you go.
Right. Try not to be killed is the premise of all these movies.
yeah it's just all about survival there. So in that sense, I think they do a very good job of that. And so I guess we could just end up talking about the probably the cast overall, since I already know we mentioned Sarah Polley, who played Anna. And this might be a situation very similar to House of a Thousand Corpses or something, where the characters' names don't really ever stand out. Like, even characters I liked, I could not tell you any of their names. It just, I felt like whenever it came to each of the characters, they had a particular stereotype in zombie apocalypse role to follow, as bad as that sounds.
Right, and they also had just like a diversity of roles such that they would kind of bump heads when they're all together. There's like a cop archetype and like a gangster archetype, and they kind of butt heads. And there's like some security guards that want order, and then there's some more like laissez-faire, level-headed people that want order. And there's just like they create these little tensions to create small storylines in between.
Yeah. I feel like, and again, I do think those characters are pivotal. I mean, again, it's kind of like slasher films. You see the same kind of characters pop up, like the really slutty one, the pothead of the group, the Chad, there's stuff like that. So trust me, whenever I say like, stereotypical roles, I get it. I'm perfectly fine with it.
Right.
It just again kind of falls into like the same thing slashers do, in the fact that with names it's hard to do it, aside from like, okay, well, she's the main girl, trying to speak the voice of common sense and everything.
Especially with the exception of like two people, I feel like they don't even call each other by their names very often.
No, they really don't. They're just like, hey, what's up? Yeah. And the interesting thing is that this story goes on. They don't really say how long it's been, but you could tell it's been like months, I imagine, or something along those lines, but they don't really ever explicitly say how long it's been.
Well, as you might imagine, the like first day of the outbreak in this area is a longer portion, but then there's kind of some time skips and some, they hole up in the mall for a little while. Yeah,
for sure, which I think is definitely like good, because again, it's like that's the natural thing to do. Just wait in an area until it becomes uninhabitable and move on. I mean, that's just the human species as a whole,
right there.
But whenever it came to characters, like I'm just providing the IMBD list and just kind of bullet point go through.
Yeah.
Because again, I mean, there's lots of characters, but I mean, there is like the main quote unquote group that you see. And so, you know, Anna, the main lead, I thought she did perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I felt like, I don't know if it was just me or something, I felt like they really focused on trying to establish her character in the first few minutes of the film there, so that way we get an idea of who she is. And then as the film continues on, that development kind of stops, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure, because they kind of focus on the characteristics of other people, and she's just like there in the scenes or not, you know. Like she's just no, I completely agree. And they spend a lot of time. I mean, the movie starts with her in a hospital as a nurse tending to unrelated issues, although if you don't know, I wouldn't count this as a spoiler since it's like the first minute, but you know, it's like there's a patient that she's checking in on where they're like, he was bitten or whatever, and they so like it's probably the first zombie case, but they're like whatever, and then she just leaves and goes home and then like takes a nap and wakes up, and then zombies are here, you know. They was that quick.
Yeah, so I think and I think it's good that they took the time to kind of show the stuff to happen before the outbreak there, or right at the beginning there, where she still has her normal life. Again, you get to see kind of who she is and everything. I'm just disappointed that, you know, again, I know whenever there's a lot of stuff to do in the film, which the film is like pretty long, it's like over 2 hours long. I guess I was hoping for more development. I think the reason is, and this is kind of the weird thing about me, because I'm a slasher dude, and whenever I'm watching films, I'm watching it for the killer. I'm not watching it for the survivors.
Right.
But in a zombie film, I'm typically rooting for the survivors as opposed to the zombies, you know. I mean, granted, the zombies can sometimes create like cool deaths, like, oh, that's brutal, but for the most part, I'm rooting for the survivors as opposed to slashers where I'm like rooting for the killer. I mean, it's basically like a sport for me. So I think that's the reason why I have more issue with them not being developed as much there, because you want to see them survive and everything, but whenever there's not enough there, it kind of makes it hard, and so you're just kind of
That's a good point. Yeah, because whenever like Jason kills a camper that didn't get a lot of screen time, it's like, well, you know, okay, I'm missing out on the fact of being sad that my favorite camper died or whatever. But like, you get to see Jason kill somebody, so you're still getting something out of it. When you watch a zombie kill somebody that like, and they spend a lot of time on it, and that person only had like a minute and a half of screen time, you're like, do I care? You know, like
I don't know. And maybe it's like, maybe other people get enjoyment of seeing like zombies tear after other people. For me, I'm like, it's pretty cool the first couple of times, but it's just one of those tricks that I feel like it's essential in each zombie film to have, but it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. I will say, I mean, I know there's some movies, older movies, that are like slow zombies, you know? And as I understand, like, the original Dawn of the Dead was the first one that had fast zombies, right? Or is it this one that had the first one?
I don't know. I'm trying to remember, because in the original film, they were slow. Like, they staggered around there.
But this is, like early 2000s, I feel like, is whenever the zombies started getting faster. And that just makes so much more sense as, like, a threat for a bad guy. It would make sense that there's this giant outbreak. Because, like, man, I'm just glad. I'm glad we didn't watch a slow zombie film, I guess, because they wouldn't be as spooky for me as these guys. It's a genuine terror. So I get why people enjoy zombie films like this, where there's some, you know, guy running full speed at you trying to bite your fucking neck off, and oh yeah, there's actually 4 dozen of them. It's a scary numbers situation of, you know, you're being pursued by multiple hunters. I get why people get enjoyment out of that, and there's also just the apocalypse outfit. Okay, you guys got to work together and create a little whole of humanity and survive. You know,
I think that's more of the draw that people get from zombie films is that apocalypse. Now, like, oh, would you survive the zombie apocalypse? Because I'm sure I've been asked that, and you probably have been asked that as well there. So I think it's just a fun scenario to do. I did also want to confirm the first film to do the fast zombies was this film called Nightmare City, but the popular one that everyone attributes the fast zombies to is 28 Days Later.
Okay.
But that being said, yeah, definitely the slow zombie is more of the traditional thing you see. But again, I think you're right in the fact that they probably just sped it up because they were like, well, slow zombies are only scary if there's a billion of them
Yeah.
at once there. But if they're chasing after you full force at you,
Right.
that's pretty terrifying there.
And I do think, like, in a situation like this, you need to scale up the zombies because, like, they found their way to barricade themselves in a mall or whatever, or, gun store, in a home. Like, you have a way where the zombies can't just, like, the mass numbers open a window and walk in, Whenever you get that level of safety against them, it's like, okay, well, they have to be a threat somehow. And the threat is if there's even, like, a little hole they can squeeze through, they're going to squeeze through and try to bite your shit.
Yeah, for sure. Not to mention the fact that they're pretty strong individuals there, and they only want one thing, and that's to feed.
And they turn really quickly, like dead zombie instantly, like.
And they do kind of establish rules in this universe, which I think that's something we could definitely talk about later whenever it comes to the rules and how people perceive the rules and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a fine line whenever you're establishing a universe's rules, like stuff that's like common sense and not common sense.
Yeah.
I think that's a major thing we'll have to talk about there. But I definitely agree that whenever it comes to turning, as it comes to find out, it definitely is pretty quick.
Yeah.
Pretty quick there. And we totally got sidetracked with the rest of the characters, but like I said, we'll just fire
There's
through.
Just so many of
Yeah,
them.
like just a lightning round. One of my favorites, but again, I think it's just because this dude did an amazing job, was Ving Ramses as Kenneth.
Yeah,
which he was a police officer.
cop.
I really liked him, kind of like the no nonsense, very dutiful being there.
And he was purpose driven. He had a purpose. I won't spoil it for you. He had a purpose. That purpose sort of gets misdirected, and then he has to find a new purpose. And so it's interesting to see someone that like has some sort of plot element that's just individual to them, and they're going for it.
Yeah, so I definitely appreciated that they gave him moments and stuff like that. So maybe that's one of the reasons why I ended up connecting with him a bit. Now, that being said, I'm not going to be completely biased and be like, oh, it's well written. It's just the fact that I feel like out of all the characters, he got a little bit more meat on the bone whenever it came to the script, and, his acting chops are good. Like, I totally bought him as a very serious officer there. He would have a couple of moments there just being like, well, that kind of came out of left field for him.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I feel like he's a wonderful addition, and I definitely was interested in seeing if he survived or not.
Right.
And then we have our good old Michael here, played by Jake Weber. And I feel like he's also fine. I feel like the actor was pretty fine until the very end, which I will kind of mention towards the end of the film, his character development, which again, we probably talk a lot. I feel like he was just kind of also just the cautious one, although there is one character choice at the beginning of the film whenever he's having the crowbar in his hand and he finds another weapon
and he switches it out for the other weapon. This other weapon is a croquet mallet.
Yeah, and not like a, sturdy one, like the cheap, like, Dollar General croquet mallet, which I'm not even going to begin to understand. I think the only reason why they did that is so that way they would end up giving him, like, a little pike on accident. That's about the only reason, I would think.
So that he can get a cool kill.
Yeah, but, so, like, character-wise, I feel like he's fine. Nothing too crazy, just fine there. And then we go down to, I'm so sorry if I pronounce this wrong, Mickey Pfeiffer, who plays the character Andre. Again, I feel like he's the person that's you typically see in zombie films, the very skeptical one, and the one who's very arrogant a lot of the time there, likes to challenge authority, stuff like that.
Right. I do like that they gave him, what's her name?
Is it Nicole?
No, it wasn't Nicole. It was his
Luda.
Yeah, Luda. He had like a girlfriend, wife, something who was pregnant. He had a partner with him, and so he was like protective. He's like, all right, I gotta get this my girl and my baby, like safe. And so he kind of had like. Because there's little, you see the lines drawn with the survivors of who they trust, what kind of clique they're in, and that's his like individual. He's like, I got me and my girl, and no one else matters,
Yeah, I definitely thought that was definitely a good, interesting dynamic to bring in, especially since Luda was pregnant, which again is not a typical scenario I've seen in other horror films and media. The only ones I would say I've seen it through is like The Walking Dead there. But it was definitely a good change of pace. And again, it surprisingly, his character developed in a way I was not expecting a bit. Like, I mean, you would expect one thing and then it becomes another thing. And that's definitely something I most certainly want to talk about in spoilers, kind of where his character ends up towards the end of the film there. But I felt like him and Luda were good, and you could tell he was a very loving partner to her. So that was kind of like nice again, because he's kind of a jerkwad there, but not certainly as big of a jerkwad as other individuals we meet, like one of the security guards, CJ, the lead one with the handlebar mustache, played by Michael Kelly. And I don't know what it is, but this dude's deplorable, but I thought he was like one of the best written characters.
They actually gave him like a redemption arc. Like he's like awful, and then he does his time, and then he comes back to redeem himself whenever they need him. So like he's
yeah, he was good, and I like believed his arc throughout it there, because again, like whenever you first meet CJ, he's pretty much like, I'm the one that wears the pants around here.
Listen up, bucko.
Yeah, because he's one of the security guards at the mall, and he basically called dibs on it. And so he's like, no, this is my place. Why should I let you all stay here?
Right.
And he's basically just a piece of rat human being there that you would think would just be a piece of rat the entire time. But really, again, he does have like a little bit of a redemption arc, so it's very interesting to see. So if it comes to like favorite actors of it, I'd probably say it'd be between Kenneth and CJ.
Yeah, they do their parts pretty well, yeah.
But speaking of other despicable people, there is Steve, played by Ty Burrell, like the $1 million playboy, absolutely full of himself and not contributing anything there, barely. Again, I just feel like he's just the very nihilistic, playboy. That's pretty much his role in the film there, and I feel like, again, does a pretty good job there. And then there's the other rookie security guard, Terry, played by Kevin Zegers, and again, he's just like young, fresh face there. I thought he did fine, but again, they made it seem like he was going to get a lot of development, like whenever he first like goes get the keys there, and then aside from that, they try to do stuff, but it's just also like, I don't really feel a connection here. Right,
they just kind of like smash him together with some other characters that aren't developed, and it's like, oh, there you go.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, that's development there. And talk about the third security guard, Tucker. No, Tucker's the one with like the good old boy.
Oh yeah, it might be
Bart. Oh man, they're like whenever we say there's a lot of IMDb listings here, and whenever we're having to connect like pictures with the characters, and again, it's hard whenever they look different. But anyways, I guess since we mentioned the third security guard, which we don't even know the name of.
His name's not important.
His name's not important.
He's a big dummy. That's
yeah,
his character.
He's a big awful dummy. That's pretty much him. Piece of rat human being. Jeez Louise, there's so many names.
Right, because there's just more characters show up later. You get a whole bus full of them. You get
and then Nicole, fine.
She's a daughter of a dude.
Yeah, and
Then there's the dude. I don't remember his name.
yeah, it's so bad. It's because, like, again, whenever you're in these scenarios, people aren't going to be like, like, oh, I really grew attached to this one character. It's basically just numbers.
When you guys watch the movie, if you do, you will know we're not just talking about random names of characters that popped in a scene or two. These are characters that are in the majority of the movie. We just can't tell you that much about them.
Yeah, I would say out of all the films, this one has by far been the worst one for me to try to remember names.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because, like, other films, like, I might have seen them more, so it just got embedded in my skull. But yeah, I mean, like I said, and then Norma, like the mom of the group.
Right.
That's pretty much it. Tucker, the good old boy,
right.
Good old Southern boy.
Rootin' tootin'.
And then
you gotta talk about Andy though.
And that okay.
Andy's one of the better
okay.
characters.
Yeah. By far, the only person that we remember the name of, which again probably helped that he was standing on his store that said Andy's Gun Store, is Andy. And it's that's one of my favorite things about this film is the whole Andy dynamic there, because
there's like a gun store across the street from the mall, and Andy's like on the roof of it, and he's alive, but they can't really get to him, so they just like communicate via signs back and forth, and Andy's cool.
Yeah, and I thought it was just going to be like one like kind of throwaway joke or whatever they do that, but no, it becomes a bigger thing there, and I really like that. That's like probably one of the best nuggets I could find in this film.
It's like the only, because like the news stations close down pretty quickly, and so like it's the only communication they have with the outside world, quote unquote, is Andy down the street. And even then, it's not like he has any more info, so they're just kind of like, it's the only person outside that they're communicating with. It's like, okay, there's hope. There's somebody alive out there. But
yeah, and I just really like that a ton. And I think that's just one of the things I feel like this Dawn of the Dead remake does well, is that I could tell you it is vastly different from the original one. And really the only similarities is they're in a mall. That's pretty much it. And it kind of makes me glad. I wish more remakes would be more daring by changing things up as opposed to just trying to recreate what was already fine in the first film. Right. So I give major props for that. But yeah, the Andy that is the one name we remember. That is the absolute one name, and even though you don't really get a sense of his character, you can kind of pick up smaller things, like he's just a chill dude on top of his gun store that's surrounded by zombies, and he's just going, sup, bro?
Yeah, he's got a little bit of a quirky sense of humor. I feel like, honestly, the restrictions on being able to develop Andy made it so they actually did the best character development, because they had only a small amount of screen time, and they couldn't have him say any lines, really. And yet he's one of the better developed characters, because he like cracks jokes by writing him he plays chess with the cop by they write out the moves on the whiteboards and go back and forth. And you can kind of tell, like, there's one part where he asks for info and they write, this whole city's been taken over or whatever, and he's just like, and he writes in, so what's the bad news? Question mark. Like, and I feel like, honestly, and that's a common like writing thing too. If you give yourself a lot of restrictions, like you have to write a story in only 2 pages and using this first line or whatever. Like whenever you give your restrictions, you're like, okay, and then you can create something better. I feel like they honestly accidentally made good character development by making it difficult to make good character development. They're like, how do we do that? Well, we have to give them this quirky line, And if only they did that to the rest of the characters, that they had more freedom with. But.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually a really good observation, is the fact that they have, like, these survivors were with 24/7, so that should be like, world's your oyster. You can do whatever you want. But because of that, they end up not developing them that well. But Andy, who is basically secluded, you only get to see him like through a pair of binoculars even there. And yeah, the one thing I will add about that scene I liked is their guessing game. Yeah, that was very well done. I feel like that's something like that James Gunn would come up with again. So that whole relationship dynamic and everything they do is it's probably my favorite thing about this film, just easily there. I mean, there's other stuff that I think is very interesting and cool of what they did, but that one I was just like, man, I like this.
When you say
This is-
guessing game, are you talking about like the Guess Who that they play?
you know, Burt Reynolds.
Yeah.
That was so good. Because that is something you probably would do if you're just trapped there for a while. It's like, well, what do we do?
Right.
Why don't we play a guessing game? So yeah, I really like that scene. That's probably the best part of the film for me personally. There of what I really enjoyed.
Look forward to that, fellas.
Yes, for sure. I will also mention, you know, since I actually I did the Leo meme pointing at the screen there, is whenever Tom Savini pops up on screen as the county sheriff.
Oh yeah.
Which he you know, he's a makeup effects artist there. He actually did the makeup effects for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which I thought was really well done. It's just, again, you know, was one of those things that we talked a lot about that, so that was an oversight. But he also did Friday the 13th, and he was part of the original Dawn of the Dead, and was even a character in there. He was like a leader of a biker gang there, so it was funny just seeing him pop up, you know, just as a little cameo at the beginning, because he's playing a sheriff there as they're asking like, what are these bodies and everything. So I thought that was a pretty cool, like, hey, that's Tom Savini, you know. So that was really cool. And there are other characters, like I've mentioned there. Like, I know they have the one dude that was talking to CJ and the other guard about like his backstory, and CJ's I do not care. I do not care.
The organ player.
Yeah, the organ
like,
player.
I think I first discovered I was gay when I was 13, and they were like, oh my god.
So they do definitely try to add characters in and have, like, you know, the dumb blonde of the group. I mean, it's bad, but that's kind of what she is there. Again, don't even know the names, don't have pictures. It's just like going off sheer memory. So yeah, that took up a decent chunk of time to talk about characters, even if they were like brief IMDb descriptions, sort of like, you know, this character does this.
Right.
But I feel
we had to talk to them, even talk about them, even like if they weren't developed well, because so much of the movie is like not killing zombies. So much of the movie is like trying to build drama and tension inside this, or you know, romantic relationships or whatever inside this mall. But they just they try to do too much and not enough of. They didn't make enough use of the scenes that they did use, you know what I mean, to actually develop characters. There's a couple, like, you know, the cop was developed well, Luca and her boyfriend were developed really well, you know, but by and large, all those characters we just rattled off were, like, pretty weak.
No, I think that's definitely, I think you pretty much hit it on the head there. Man, I'm winded talking about characters. How about we talk about... Is there any other points you want to hit about the zombies in particular, like their look and stuff? I know we mentioned how we like how fast they move and how ferocious.
Yeah, I do think they did a good job with sort of world building with the zombies, you know. There's definitely some ridiculous stuff, like how she takes a nap, wakes up, looks outside, and everything's on fire. You know what I mean?
Oh my god, yeah.
The special effects are a little... Just everything explodes. It's like you're watching a Michael Bay movie or something. It's that early 2000s level of just like... gun goes off, entire building explodes, and they show 5 angles of it. Ridiculousness, you know? It was a little over the top, but I think the zombies themselves, I think they did a good job of developing rules for them and like why they're such terrible threat, but also why, like, how to shut them down to some degree. You know, they discover fairly quickly, because you need to survive, you know, how the zombies are made, how you stop the zombies, you know. And it was nice sort of pacing for making those discoveries, I think. I'll give them credit for that. But
yeah, and that's kind of how I feel. I don't feel like they're, like, super unique. I just feel like, yep, that's a zombie there.
Yeah, they just add in little things like they find a dog later, and then they find out that the zombies don't care about the dog at all. They just care about humans, so... they have a special little mission that they put the dog on, and it's neat, you know?
Definitely. I will say, I did think the overall look of the zombie. Obviously, it depends on how long they've been dead and everything.
Mm-hmm.
The first reveal of the zombie, I felt like was cleverly done.
Yeah.
Because, again, this is the beginning of the outbreak, and with the way the zombie looked, it was very unassuming bit there. Like, it's clear, like, you know, because on the surface level, you're like, oh my God, what happened? You know, there. And you're not thinking, like, what is this thing? So I felt like that was done pretty well overall.
Yeah,
there.
that's an opportunity, and I think they seized on it because the characters aren't like on their toes yet. But then after the first zombie, they're on their toes for the rest of the movie.
But I think you did hit a good point about the effects overall, because there's definitely a lot of like that CG explosion there. That's but the one thing that we pointed out that we thought was really silly is that, you know, there's the overhead shot where the gal is like just getting away from her neighborhood, which is like pretty much in turmoil due to the zombie outbreak. And like from a bird's eye view, we see this truck lose control and just crash and blow up, which is so weird because I'm so pretty much used to like close-up shots of it to where they want the full explosion. But no, it's just like a little like, you know, from above. So there's definitely a lot of...
It was a digital looking explosion. It was a 2004 special effects explosion.
Yeah, they really liked focusing on the effects there. And there's a lot of times where I'm like, okay, I get it. Please move on.
Yeah, I think that one made us laugh so much because also the explosion was like 4 times as big as the truck. You know, it's just like it was like okay.
But I mean, I felt like the effects overall were like fine. There's only like a few effect. Well, actually, I don't know. I feel like the effects are fine. I feel like that's what I could say. I don't feel like there's any bad effects. There's definitely one effect that happens later in the movie, but I think the whole scenario with that...
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yo, you know which one I'm talking about. I have not noped before so much in my entire life than with that one scene. So people that have seen the film, you could probably guess which one I'm talking about there.
The most disturbing scene. Yeah.
I will mention, and this is like a stupid nitpick. This is like not even like valid criticism. It's just my criticism. It made me sad they shut off the mall music early on.
Yeah.
Because that's like one of the things that I just find so quaint about malls is just like that classic mall music.
I think it would be funny in a little turn of pace to like have that elevator mall music playing, you know, while they're shooting zombies, you know, and running for their lives.
Yeah, see, and like I just feel like that nuance would have been missed because again, the music that played is just typical zombie music, you know, there. Except again, it's weird because they do have like a lot of like pop culture music in there, but one of the weirdest things, and this is where my brain is like, I have no idea what's going on, is during that montage where they have the jazzy version of Down with the Sickness from Disturbed there.
Is that Robert Cheese or whatever his name is that does like jazzy versions of the song? I remember that song, that version of Down with the Sickness being popular probably because of this movie. I remember people singing it when I was in like 8th grade. Down with the sickness, which would have been right around when this movie was made. Yeah.
I had never heard of that before, so this was the first time hearing it. Because it's funny because you're like listening to it and then you just hear doom, 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 doom.
Oh shit.
Yeah. It says that there. And it was just like, what in the world? And it's during a montage, like, you know, Aaron mentioned that Andy and the cop were playing chess with each other. That's going on, but then it's like the pretty blonde is trying on clothes and then having sex with like the douchey playboy thing. It's just like a lot of random stuff happening, which again, I feel like it's fine because again, they have like montages to show that time is passing and stuff, but it was just like, what in the world am I watching there? So there's a lot of moments that took me out on like, what in the world am I watching? A bit there, kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, but this time it just mostly lost me.
Yeah.
There as a but yeah, so there's a lot of weird stuff whenever it comes to effects and everything else. Trying to think aside from that, was there any pros or cons that you have with Dawn of the Dead 2004 so far? Without spoiling, of course.
Man, I do think it would be remiss to not emphasize how like campy this is, I guess is the word. It's like that unique early 2000s level of camp, you know. It's very corny in times. I would not suggest anyone watch this if they're watching, like, if they're really in the mood for like a serious thriller where they're like, oh yeah, can I dissect the important elements of this movie? Like,
it's basic.
It is not that movie.
It's basic. It feels like a movie that our generation would have been obsessed with in high school.
Yeah,
mid-high.
And I feel like they were. And I distinctly remember there is like the opening credits montage, I guess you should say, like where they have the title and they have like all these news clips of like the outbreak, and that part's really well done. You know, especially when you contrast it to a lot of the other like effects in the movie that are like, okay, I think it was questionable that they started that scene with a bunch of Muslims praying.
Yeah, that was so weird.
I was like, why did you start your zombie montage with that? But you know, the rest of it was really good. But I remember that because I was like, oh yeah, like the edgy kid that was in film club recreated that that montage. I was like, that's where I've seen this before. But
oh, that's funny.
So shout out to him.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I would definitely agree. This is, if you're looking for a much more somber, serious film, without spoiling anything for this for Aaron, Night of the Living Dead is definitely more of a somber film, I would say. Definitely doesn't amp the action and camp there. Because there's a lot of moments that I'm like, yeah, that's a Zack Snyder moment.
Yeah, that's a Snyder moment.
Yeah.
And we watched the Snyder cut of this one, too, it should be said. There was an extra 10 minutes of gore, sex, and what Snyder said at the beginning. Was that Snyder?
Yeah, that was Zack Snyder at the beginning.
A younger Snyder. Yeah, he was like, you know, it's a lot more of relationships or whatever. So 10 extra minutes to develop characters, and he still didn't do it. Good job, Snyder.
Yeah. And I don't know. Again, like, as much as I love James Gunn, this is definitely not his strongest script there.
No, there are moments, but yeah, no.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of good moments. I'm like, man, I really like that. But yeah, definitely not his strongest work, and would not be the first thing I recommend by James Gunn to other people. And that's like no diss at him. It's just the fact that he's done other pieces of work that are much better than this.
I've watched a lot more James Gunn media, I was realizing as I watched this, than I have Snyder. I was like, I don't think I've watched... The only other Snyder film I can think of that I watched was Man of Steel, and that was poo-poo. And so I didn't watch any of the other Superman movies because I was like, poo-poo, you know?
You haven't watched
I think
300?
I didn't... I've never watched
300.
300.
Wow.
And I do think I actually watched Aquaman, if he did Aquaman.
I don't think... Did he do Aquaman? I don't know. Let me go ahead.
To remember.
Let me see right here.
I thought he had some sort of involvement with it, but
James Wan.
Oh,
James Wan, like the dude who made Saw.
This is the very same. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, we learn something new every day on this podcast. I tell you what.
Well, that wasn't a great movie, but you know.
I know that Zack Snyder, though, he directed like Batman versus Superman and Watchmen, which
that was the other one that I was thinking.
I need to watch the Ultimate Cut, but I'm also kind of afraid because sorry, Zach, but I really despised the Watchmen film. Aside from Rorschach, Jackie Earle Haley as Rorschach, that's perfect. That is the one beautiful diamond in the rough in that movie, which, again, maybe if I watch the Ultimate Cut, I'll be like, I'm sorry, Zach, I was wrong.
Right.
But aside from that, definitely a lot of Zack Snyder moments there where I was like, yeah, I feel like I've seen this exact same thing in other films. And so, I mean, and that's not bad. I mean, there's like stuff like you could tell when an Edgar Wright film's an Edgar Wright film, Tarantino film's a Tarantino film.
Yeah,
there's like those small nuggets. So that's no knock at him, but it was just funny. Like, yep, Snyder moment. Yeah. So aside from that, I don't think there's really much I could talk about without talking straight up spoilers there. So, If you're good for it, Aaron, I think we'll just jump over to the ratings real quick for our lovely listeners.
Yeah, let's do the rating. Man, I've been so ramped up in just my reaction, just my visceral, physical reaction to this movie that I haven't even thought of what I would put on a number scale. God, if I was rating this just for shock value, just on its body genre level, like, then by God, it would be up there, because there's some moments. If you're just looking for some horror, just looking for like, wow, some scenes that really make me cringe, yeah, 10 out of 10 for that. If I'm rating this on the scale that I usually do, which probably isn't a fair scale, but it's a lovely contrast to Cole's scale, where he rates more on his personal enjoyment. I personally enjoyed this film, but I'm going to rate it more on my typical critical scale. This was like a...
That's fair. That's how I feel.
This was like a 4. Yeah, this was about a 4. It's in the 4 range, give or take, plus or minus. There are some honestly, genuinely fun moments, some genuinely strong character moments, and they set up some good stuff that I'm looking forward to talking about in spoilers. Yeah. But the vast majority is really cheesy, kind of in a bad way. It's I hate to mention this every time I mention critical things about horror movies, but the character choices that are made go beyond reasonable choices that one would make in a stressful environment. I'm not talking about main plot points. I'm talking about little things that just are obvious devices to make the zombies get in somehow, Even the main character was really, really forgettable.
Yes, for sure.
But the zombies were cool. I thought the pacing was fine in most parts. But overall, it just like, I couldn't think of something that I would, if you were like, what award would you nominate this for? I'm like, most disturbing scene with a pregnant woman. I don't know. Like, what would I give this? The music choice wasn't special. It felt kind of like the kids in your high school like film club that got the budget to make a movie, and they made this movie because they were like, oh, there's gonna be guns and stuff, and we're gonna put some tits in there somehow if my mom lets me, and or to shoehorn that in. And, and all the characters were just sort of really surface level. The tension, the plot, everything was really just surface level. So I wouldn't feel super comfortable giving it anything beyond a 4. But on a personal enjoyment scale, I mean, Coale and I laughed a lot. It just wasn't, and we had big reactions. I mean, this is a great, like, flick to just put on if your friends have a stomach and you want to watch something, or you want to scare a date into your arms, I guess, or something. I don't know, but yeah, that's my overall rating of Dawn of the Dead remake.
Yeah, I think your rating is very fair, in my personal opinion. I feel like I'm with you, like that thing. Yeah. That's how I am, because like the one thing that popped up is, while I'm thinking about this film, like, how do I feel about it? The best analogy I could come up with is that I feel like it's like a bottle of trail mix. Yeah. There's like,
it's like a bottle of trail mix when you don't like raisins.
Yeah, pretty much like that. And I was actually going to say, for me, it was more so the peanuts, which are a bit more, but like the peanuts are like the worst. Like, right.
And it's an overpowering flavor.
Yes, it's not the Mr. Peanut thing. These are like, is this birdseed sort of peanut there going on. And I just felt like, because while watching the film, there's some stuff that I'm like, don't know how to feel about that, both on a critical and personal level there. It's pretty, but then there's like solid gold moments. It's like somehow this trail mix has ended up with the best M&Ms you have ever tasted in your life. You don't know what it is, but there's like stuff that I've never seen in a zombie film, for better or for worse. And so having Dave choose this for us to watch, I could definitely see why he chose it for us, because it's definitely, it's own thing, which again, I feel like for a remake, it's kind of hard to do because a lot of times remakes are afraid to step out. But I feel like your analysis kind of being like, yeah, it's like a bunch of students got together and you're like, oh, what if it's cool if they did this? Which I feel like Zack Snyder and James Gunn probably did that.
They were probably those students.
Yeah, they were probably big fans of the original. They're like, oh man, what if we did this for a zombie film and do all that? So I could definitely see that being the reason. But yeah, it's very much a trail mix sort of movie for me. There's moments of like, man, I like that, or ooh, I really like that. But there's also a lot of moments of like, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
about it, especially towards the end. There's a lot of decisions, both by the characters and the filmmakers of this film, that I'm like, I really don't like that end. The ending, especially the way they chose to end it.
You talking about like
The
ending and then the credits
yes,
roll, or like
all of that,
all of it,
all the big rump end of the ending there.
I
you know, that's pretty. If I had to argue, that's about the time where I was like starting to get like,
yeah, getting a little antsy.
yeah, doing that. Like it had the same effect to me that the new Scream film did towards the end, where I was just making so many decisions and I'm just like. But fortunately, it's at the very end there, and I didn't feel like it was. Well, I don't know. It might be as bad of a slap to the face to me as The Descent was, the ending.
Really? Yeah.
For me, anyways. But we'll definitely talk about that. So, rating wise, let's rate this trail mix here. I feel like I was thinking like 6, and I'm like I can't do 6 there. So, like, I'm at a 5 out of 10 for me, or 5.5. But again, it's not the fact that I hated this film. Like I said, rating stuff like 5 out of 10 isn't too bad there. There's still a lot of stuff to like, but there's just so much other stuff that I feel like holds it back for me personally there. So I feel like it's, as Aaron said before, this is an amazing film to watch with a group of friends, or again just seeing like how your loved one reacts to what's happening on screen, because there's definitely again, I was not joking when I said we have had the most audible reactions there, and I think I might have gotten the loudest giggle strand from Aaron for a bit, where he was just like nearly going hysterical laughing. And yeah, I'm
the whole like opening before the credits was just like, what is going on?
yeah, it was very, very fitting overall. But yeah, so still a solid recommendation. Like, if you love zombie films and have somehow not seen this, it's a no-brainer. You should watch it. Just especially for the new stuff it brings to the table, which I think that's always the interesting thing with zombie films, is what new thing are you going to throw into this mythos of the zombie there? And so
if nothing else, I feel like this is one you can try. You can have a little sample of, because I feel like you could watch that whole sequence before the opening credits, and then like through the opening credits, and that's like 5 minutes of your life, and you'll know instantly if you want to watch this movie or not.
That is most certainly fair. If you do not like the first 5 minutes of the film, that's it. They've established a tone of what you're going to get, so you're either going to buckle up or get out of the ride. But yeah, so with that being said, how about we talk about them spoilers, Aaron?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of stuff we could talk about in the spoilers there. So I will let you have the liberty of choosing which one to pull the trigger on first.
I would love to start at the end. Let's work from the end backwards.
Okay.
Like me on my Tinder dates. I love working from the end. I love eating ass. I'm sorry. Sorry, Mom, Dad.
At least you came out.
Yeah, as an ass eater. And this movie was ass. I'm just kidding. It wasn't that bad. But so quick recap in case you're listening to spoilers, but because you don't care, but you haven't seen the movie. So they all go to the mall. They decide at some point we got to get out of the mall, and so they're gonna go pick up Andy in a bunch of armored shuttle buses and go to the marina and get on a boat and try to find an island that doesn't have zombies on it. And they, upon reaching the marina, let's just recap the ending because I know you really don't like it, Cole.
Oh yeah. Let's
just
start at the marina.
That's where I want to start. Yeah, that's where I want to dig in the most.
I don't know though. There is a couple of moments to the marina.
There's a lot before it that happens.
I guess we'll start at the marina, then start taking it backwards. What happened?
There are
previously.
so many questionable moments that I feel like we would get stuck going backwards infinitely if we don't just start at the marina.
True.
So boring guy that I don't remember, and Anna, who's
Best Buy guy.
Best Buy guy, yeah, Best Buy guy and main character girl are Best Buy guy reveals upon them about to get onto the boat in the marina that he has been bitten, and that is one of the rules here: is that if you are bitten, you will turn into a zombie at some point.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And he has to stay behind. And so the boat takes off without him, and Anna's like, no, I loved you, despite the fact that there was exactly one scene on the shuttle, it was on the shuttle on the way here, where they hinted at any sort of romantic relationship at all. And they had 2 hours to do this, but this is the one time where they had them even in a room together with no one else. That was the first time I saw them ever together with nobody else.
Yeah, and because there's nothing in the montage that showed them talking, like a date sort of thing. That would have been a great moment because how many dates happened at the mall anyways?
Right, that would have been great, or even just some sort of friendship, partnership, working together, any sort of interaction between these two characters. But it felt like they got to that point in the movie and they were like, oh wait, we needed to be really sad that he got bit for the main character, that we forgot that this is the perspective of the movie that it goes through. So let's just make them fall in love really quick. We got about 15 seconds, and that's what it felt like. They were just like, "Oh, close to get clip." He's like, "No, I can't." And then they drive on. And you're like, "Okay." We both audibly were like, "What?" Like that was weird when that moment happened. Flash forward to the marina. The security guard guy needs to finish his redemption arc, so the gigantic propane tank that he slapped into the bus comes into play, and he lights a flare, and he shoots. Well, he lights the flare by shooting the end of the flare. First off, that's just what kind of movie this is. And then he shoots this 36-inch wide propane tank, and I know that because they had it part in the montage where he writes 36 on the side after measuring it. And the whole marina explodes in such a perfect way that just the dock is left, and the explosion makes it so the zombies can't get through. He self-sacrifices, so that they can all get on the boat. Guy reveals that he's bitten. Oh no, boo-hoo, boo-hoo. And they spend a full minute with him just holding a gun and the smoke in the background of the marina. And it was maybe cool for 5 seconds, except for they keep cutting back and forth and just spending way too much time on it because they probably spent a full day of just filming that, and it'd be a shame not to use all that footage. So
maybe that was the extra 10 minutes.
Maybe that's the whole extra 10 minutes was in the background trying to make this more dramatic without any words. And then, before the boat is even, 50 feet away, he's not, they've already established you don't turn until you die. You die, and then if you were bitten at any point in your life, then you turn into a zombie. He was not at risk of dying in the next 5 minutes. He just kind of got a bite on his arm, and he's like, well, shit. But he decides to go ahead and just shoot himself in the head in front of everybody.
That's so awful.
Which was not the move that this guy would have made at all. I could see some other character making it, but he was the level-headed. He does everything for the sake of humanity because I was a good father, but I was not a good husband. And the reason he probably wasn't a good husband is because he'd be willing to shoot himself in front of the woman he loves. What the fuck, dude? And then you think that's the end of the movie.
Oh.
But it's not. You want to talk about what happened during the credits?
I don't.
I'll talk about it. They find a camera, and they start playing the found footage on the camera. And since it was the douchebag millionaire's boat, he's sitting there with some women with some boobies out. And that's how they sneak boobies into the movie. And that's the second time they were like, "Oh, this is where we could put some tits in." So they slap some tits on that screen real quick. And then they cut over, and it's whoever's filming on the camera. He's filming some stuff, and they find a little boat in the middle of the water, and they open the cooler, and there's just a head that's a zombie in there, which was so dumb because who took the time to cut off their head and put it in a chest when they were infected. Like, how did the only head zombie get in there? I don't know.
Oh my gosh, that just reminded me of something.
Just logically speaking, I can't even imagine how that scenario whatever. They just wanted to do a funny special effect. Sure, the movie's already over. And then they roll up to an island and they continue to exercise the complete lack of caution they have for the rest of the movie. And they're like, well, we'll just park the boat and tie it up and then just all get off on the island and check. And let the dog run off in the forest, and then just all these islander zombies come out and rush the boat, and that's the end of the movie. Because the whole world's infected, I guess. But
yeah, man.
How does that make you feel, Coale?
Not too good. Not too good.
Why don't you like
No,
that?
sir. I didn't like it at all.
Honestly, I kind of like that they wrapped it up with like an ending that was like, you know, who knows what happens next? Maybe they find something good, maybe they don't, and then they kind of rip that away from you.
Yeah,
I didn't mind that aspect.
I don't know.
Did you not like it?
I didn't like it because, again, this boils down to the fact that whenever I watch a zombie film, I like the survival. Like, I understand what they were going for is that, you know, it's not going to be like, oh, they finally got away. They're going to be happy now and everything. But at the very least, give them a moment of peace, which maybe on the boat, that was the moment of peace there. Before, again, just showing us, you know, I just feel like that's something a teenager would do, just being dark for the sake of being dark there. Be like, oh, nope, zombies are coming in. And they pretty much, they don't show it. So, I mean, it could be whatever. They could survive. But it's implied they didn't make it there. Like, they made it to the island only to then die. It just, again, it's kind of like, because that's like and it's not the fact that I'm like, oh, I need happy endings. It's not that. It's just after this entire journey and everything, I just felt like it was a giant slap to the face there. And the thing about it is the music choices in the credits. Because the first song they play during, like, the boat sequence when they're like, oh, man, look at us on the boat there. They're playing People Who Died, which, again, I associated with the Suicide Squad because they play it, like, right at the beginning of the film there. And so listening to it again, I'm like, okay, James Gunn likes that song. Okay, well, that's cool and stuff. But then, like, whenever they showed the zombies storming the deck once they dock over there, and then it starts playing Down with a Sickness, the original version, I'm just like, oh my god. And then it just did jump cuts of the zombies going, got it, got it, got it. I was like, I was just getting annoyed by it there. It just wasn't very effective. I wasn't like, oh dude, that was brutal. Yeah. I'm just like, this is dumb. I don't like this. But I don't know. Again, I just feel like if it comes to like endings like that, maybe like if they had just docked and then they're like, oh, what is that? And then it cuts, I would have been happy with that. But because they show them storming, they're not even fighting anymore. You just assume they're wiped out, period there. It just feels like, you know, look, they made it out. Except they didn't. Right. You know, which again, I know it's like, oh yeah, well, you know, they're going to have to keep surviving and stuff, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But to me, it was just kind of like, I didn't like it. And let's go. Yeah. But yes, I agree with you totally that Best Buy guy would not blow his brains out in front of everybody. Be like, bye guys. Right. Like,
give it a second.
Yeah.
You know?
Or at least like take out a couple of zombies if you have enough ammo, unless he has the one bullet there. And he's a strategic guy, right? Right. He got bit before the marina whenever the other bus crashed, which that's a whole thing there.
That was a moment.
That was a moment. He was bit. Why would he at least not plan like, well, if I'm gonna die, I'm going to try to do the thing that'll impact the most? Because you see him and he's running like as if like, oh, I'm gonna make it to the boat, gotta get out of there. And you know, the security guy, of course, like, you know, I'm gonna finish my redemption arc, get to the boat. Right. Like, are you sure Best Buy guy couldn't think of another plan that's like, maybe we should take the person that's not fit and have him leave instead to make sure they get safely to the boat. But then again, we couldn't get our 15 seconds of, oh yeah, we were a thing for 10 seconds before. And so I think it's just, at that point, I'm like, the CJ arc, I actually am fine with him blowing himself up,
Yeah.
because that's totally a move he would do.
I agree.
You know,
He's
so
a security guy, and he secured the marina.
Yeah. I liked that arc there. It's just, again, I just feel like just towards the ending, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, what is this?
Yeah.
You know, and so that's like my thing. I could see other people liking it a ton there, because they're like, oh yeah, it's brutal, zombie apocalypse, no one survives there. But I think that's just like the thing with the survival films. I feel like it's doing that is the equivalent of the slasher killing the final girl at the end of the movie. There, I just feel like it's just way less tasteful there a lot of the time there. I don't know. I just get tired of it. It's just a trope I'm tired of, I guess. So that could be my own personal bias
also,
against there.
I could see how you feel like robbed because it wasn't part of the narrative arc. The credits were already rolling, and then they were just like, "Oh, by the way, fuck you," you know?
Yeah.
And it's like they didn't like. Okay, well, if they really actually wanted us to care about these characters, which they spent the majority of the time attempting to develop them in this mall, then to just take them away without even really being able to see the footage that clearly, you know, is like, is that really? And then have nothing following up, because that would be a climactic moment if they did fail in their mission. That's something that can happen. It doesn't have to have an ending, a happy ending, but then, you know, to end on a climax with no resolution at the end just leaves people in a poor taste in their mouth.
Yeah, for sure. I just feel like I would have rathered at least gotten a hint. If you're going to do that, at least give the hint of like, oh, we're not done yet, as opposed to like, psych, the entire thing they've been striving for the entire movie was a lie. It was a fake. Ha!
You got debated.
Yeah, because again, I'm not like, I need happy ending sort of things. I just like satisfactory endings, and that was not satisfying to me. But let's keep rewinding this sucker backwards as we go to whenever, like, the buses are going through the town. And Best Buy guy had alluded to this earlier whenever they're, like, pimping out the mall buses there. And he's like, hey, I have this really cool idea. There's this slit here.
Yeah, there's a slit here. You could stick a chainsaw out, and we could cut the ones that are on the side of the bus, right? And this is the point where they decide to make it romantic, remember? Cause that was the one hint of romance. Because then Anna just says out of the blue, that's the most romantic thing a man's ever said to me, sarcastically.
Yeah.
and then they like look at each other and they're like, oh, you know, and that's where they decide to shoehorn in the romance. Like, it's like, what? But yes, they hinted at that before. That you can use this little slot to chainsaw people.
Yeah, which they do, and it does lead to good effects. But it also just leads to the old man who's wielding the chainsaw, who was probably one of the worst candidates to hold it. And the bus, you know, again, because they're mowing over dead people, going over wreckage, stuff like that, is bumpy, that he ends up losing his stance while having a chainsaw revved and pretty much starts slicing the pretty blonde's body in half there as they're both screaming and the bus just topples over. I was like, what is this?
Yeah, that was... Of all, there's a lot of ridiculous shit. That was definitely one of the top 5 most ridiculous things in that movie. It's like, all right, it's just like any time something goes wrong, they have to just like Rube Goldberg machine it so that everything explodes somehow. It's like, okay, yeah, I could get why you're riding on the bus with a chainsaw and for whatever reason you didn't decide to put it in the little slot before you charge it. I can get why you made like those 4 wrong decisions in a row. I get it. You turn around, you accidentally cleave this woman in half. I can kind of... Why didn't you just turn off the chainsaw? I don't know. He was an old man, you know. There's just, like... I was like, okay, I can excuse so much, but then just, like, suddenly the bus flips over on its side. It's not... The driver wasn't getting cleaved in half, you know? That would have made more sense.
Yeah, and so I think, like... Because, again, I know there's stuff in movies, like, especially The Evil Dead, where it's over the top and stuff, like, is implausible. But that's the fun of it. This is like a weird mix of they're doing over-the-top stuff, but also keeping it grounded. It's like they're trying to straddle the fence on what they want this film to be.
Right.
There. And I think that's the reason why stuff like this, you know, because, like, it's just a goofy moment. Because, again, it's just like, why is this old man wielding the chainsaw there? And so just watching it, you're just like, okay, I guess this is a thing. And they end up both dying there.
Right.
So that was another moment of like, what the heck is going on there. I will say, like, if we keep rewinding it back there, I do find it funny that, you know, with CJ blowing himself up with the propane tank, that's his ace in the hole every time. He's just like...
He did a lot of exploding of propane tanks. And I get it, because it's almost like he's not breaking the fourth wall, but it's almost like he's there. It's like he discovered he's in an action movie. And it's like, you could just shoot propane. Because no other character tried this, because they're living grounded in reality, presumably. But he's like, wow, if you just shoot a propane tank with a flare next to it, it kills like 400 zombies and not any of us somehow.
Yeah, so... yeah, because that second explosion was way too close for him to come unscarred. I sincerely thought he died doing that. Like, he was just going to fall, and it's just like top half was charred.
Yeah, when they're all on the bus and he like throws a propane tank in the crowd and some zombie picks it up and it's just like, and he's like, haha, gotcha, bitch, and he shoots it, and the shockwave, like, yeah, it like covers the shockwave itself is like mowing over zombies a good like quarter of a mile past the initial explosion of like a standard propane tank that you'd hook up to your barbecue. Like, it was insane. And so in the fire, it visually shows it rolling over the bus where he was just standing on top of. And then he gets in and he's like, woo-hee.
yeah, exactly.
I guess we can drive now.
Yeah, and so it's like moments like that like if it comes to like explosions, it can be like, oh yeah, it's over the top goofy, but whenever it comes to like the characters doing over the top things, it just sometimes comes out of left field. It just feels silly.
Yeah, and I just got tired of, it's a horror movie. I feel like people do scrutinize people's decisions a little too closely in horror movies generally, where they're like, why'd you run downstairs?
Yeah. It's
like, yeah, you're in a state of shock. You're running. I get whenever because you're more likely to make bad decisions then. I even excuse some of the really, really, really stupid ones, like the girl getting in the bus to go save the dog.
Oh my gosh.
Which was like infuriating as an audience member.
And that was so infuriating for me.
It's like, why would you get in a bus and drive through for this dog that you just saw walk through the zombies totally fine, so you could just whistle and get him back? But like, no. And I was like, okay, like, that was a really, really fucking dumb decision, but I get it, because she like just lost her dad and had to watch him get killed. And she just has an incredible over attachment to this dog now, and like, it was already on a risky mission, and she was really nervous about. I get it. Why did they all get in a bus and go save her? Like, and like, more people die on. People were gonna die on the way to do that. Like, well, let's all just pop up out of the sewer in front of the store and just it'll be fine. And like, whenever they didn't know if she was dead or alive or not, it was like, guys, just suddenly in one scene they're like, somebody got bit, so we have to kill them right now before they turn into a zombie. And then in the next scene they're like, well, let's just walk through a whole crowd of them, because there might be somebody that's alive at this building. Like, make up your fucking mind. Are you gonna be ruthless about, if you're infected, then you're done. If you put yourself in danger, then you're done, because we have to ensure survival above all else. Or are you going to try to save every soul? It's like they can't fucking pick. And it's the same leaders that are making these decisions. They can't fucking pick.
It's not even different individuals.
I get whenever, because the reason CJ is kind of a good character is because he sticks to his motive.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm security. We run a tight ship here. They didn't want to let those initial 4 up in there initially, but Anna was like, please, pretty please. Yeah. And he was like, fine, get in, whatever. He was reluctant to, but even then he like kept them locked in cages, and he was like, and he threatened to kill anybody that threatened his authority, because his whole thing was like, okay, nobody in here, we have to ensure safety above all else. I don't know what kind of risk you are, because we don't know about this, and I'm just trying to live, right? Yeah. His character choice made sense. Best Buy guy steps up at the beginning of the movie to be the foil to that initially, right? Yeah. He's like, no, there are people on that bus that are coming. They are alive. They need our help. And if we don't help them, then we're just as good as killing them. Okay, great. Those are two sides. Yeah. CJ kind of sticks to his guns most of the time. The only reason he has like an arc where he changes is because they like lock him in jail, and then he comes out and he's like different, and he's like, okay, I will save all these people. And that's like, oh, wow, character development and change. That makes sense. I didn't see that from Best Buy guy, who was just like, sometimes they're like, yeah, well, let's go save them. And other times he's like, I'm gonna go shoot this guy in the head because he got bit in front of his
Yeah.
daughter.
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
I'm sorry, Anna,
Yeah.
I've got to execute him. Like, well, pick one. Like,
Yeah.
which one are you?
Yeah, it's very frustrating. Like, whenever it comes to their own personal morals
Mm-hmm.
and their beliefs on why they do what they do, it's just so all over the place there. And it's not even just towards the latter half, it's the beginning, like you mentioned there. There's a lot of stuff. I know you had like one moment where the cop, like, I think it was like the one arrogant dude was talking back to Best Buy guy and be like, oh, we're going to take advice from a guy that sells TVs. He's like, better than one that steals one. And it's like,
Yeah,
do
and
you have...
It's like, do you have reason to believe? Because I was waiting. I was like, okay, he's gonna be like, oh, this cop has seen him in the arrest records or something.
Yeah.
There's gonna be some reason, or like, I saw you steal something from the other person in the party, and they're gonna create some sort of drama here. But no, they just go to the next scene. And it's like, okay, so the cop just assumed that this guy steals TVs because he's black with a gun. Like, that's the only reason I can think why he would come to that conclusion.
Yeah, so and then there's stuff like that, and then there's stuff whenever it should be common knowledge. Because I mean, I understand whenever you're writing a zombie film, you don't want to write it as if people don't know like what they're dealing with, like people are zombies. But I feel like, especially since like it's taking place in modern day, it's not in the past or anything. They're used to pop culture and everything. Shouldn't they assume like, oh man, it's like a zombie? Because like whenever it came to shooting, it's like, oh, you have to hit him in the head.
Right.
Shouldn't that always be the instinct you go off of?
And that's one thing I noticed in a lot of zombie media is that they don't know what zombies are. And like that's changed more recently. But like, yeah, it's... Zombies have been around for a while, guys.
I don't know. And so
you never seen Thriller? I mean, come on, guys.
Yeah. And so that's the thing that just bothers me. There's some stuff like not knowing, is this bite infectious? Will I turn on my own, or is it only if I die?
Right.
Sort of thing. There's like a lot of rules and stuff set up like that. But at the same point, they act like some stuff like, oh, shooting stuff in the head is effective, there. But I know it's kind of like the same thing with action movies. It's like, whenever they're shooting, they never aim for the head, and so I can suspend my disbelief in that, but there's a lot of weird moments that I thought were going to come into play later that didn't, per se. Like whenever the cop dude is wrestling a one zombie in the fountain and he cuts his arm on that little thing there. Yeah. I sincerely thought it was going to be like, are you infected or not?
No, me too, 100%. I was like, okay, because they made a point of showing him get injured, like not just, they like zoomed in on the arm getting cut, and then... in that same moment, 2 other people were getting attacked by zombies, and they all came back. And so I was like, there's going to be some sort of scrutinizing finger pointing happening now of like, you're infected. No, you're infected. No, and somebody's going to be infected and somebody's not. They didn't explore that at all to a weird degree. Such that whenever they were having this whole conflict with like the dad that came in on that truck who was already bitten, and they're like, well, we have to just execute him in cold blood now. Nobody in that moment, they even have a thing where they're recounting who else got bit. And like Luca obviously got bit. They didn't even try to hide it because I was like, was she just like hiding it or something?
Yeah,
no, because she got bit in that initial conflict. 2 other people saw it, and and then the cop wrestled the zombie on the ground. And it was bit on her arm, and then they talked about it, and like right after her boyfriend guy was like, "Oh, it's just a little bite," like. They knew. They should have known Luca got bitten, and they were just like, well, we haven't seen Luca in a few days. Yeah. Hope she's okay. Like, guys, let's just go walk in without me being armed to see if she's okay or not.
Yeah, and so there's just like a lot of decisions that does feel nonsensical. Because again, that's a hard thing, is the fact that I'm sure if people were in a real life zombie apocalypse, there's going to be individuals that make irrational decisions there. 100%. They have absolutely a way they think it should work out, even though it's absolutely preposterous. But it's just whenever it comes to this universe there, you don't feel like it's just an irrational person. It's like a rational group of people there just thinking like, I guess with zombies, it's like this. And so, You just feel like it takes them longer to catch on.
100%. And I 100%, like, in times of trauma, in times of immediate, you're being confronted with something, you're gonna make poor decisions. I get that. There's plenty of poor decisions that they make that I'm not scrutinizing right now in the movie, because sure, I get it. But they've been in this mall for weeks, months. They had time to sit where they were safe, to come up with plans, to formulate ideas, to, like, have contingency plans for things. And every time they're confronted with something, it's like it's the first time they ever thought about it. It's like, what are you doing in this mall? Like, for weeks and months on end. Like, that you're just like, well, okay, you know? Like, they didn't think that Andy was gonna starve at the top of his gun store and stuff. Yeah. He didn't think to write a message like, hey, running a little low on food, just so you know.
Yeah, until it becomes a big...
Until I was like, okay, well, he's starving. We have to send the dog across right now a few days early.
Which,
you know?
we might as well should talk about that, because that scene, it all happens kind of before the whole chainsaw incident on the bus there. Because, again, as we mentioned before, I think it's safe to say that, like, Andy in Aaron and myself's eyes is the best written character there.
Yeah.
And he has this great scene where, again, like, they're talking, checking in on Andy, and he's like, hey, I'm hungry. And so they're like, oh, okay, I guess we should send food. Well, how do we send food? It's too dangerous. And so they send the dog, in, and so he has like this whole system where it's like this like little doggy door for people to crawl through there. And so I thought that was like, oh yeah, smart play, just have the dog go through and just like follow the whistle, because it's been established early on the dog only responds to whistles. If there's a whistle, it goes there. And of course, whenever the dog slips in, one of the zombies ends up grabbing the entryway and starts funneling through. I was very surprised that was Andy's only line of defense.
Yeah, the doggy door.
The man who should have a billion plans on top of a gun store there, because the whole purpose of having a gun is being prepared for anything. That doggy door was the only thing keeping him alive. And so then whenever they start pouring in, and then he ends up inevitably getting bit there. And so then comes animal crazed Nicole, which again... Yeah. I get it. It's just annoying, I guess.
It's like such an awful, like, what the fuck moment.
And so, anyway, she, like, drives to the store because she's like, I gotta get the dog. And so, drives in. And then it has to be, like, a huge rescue mission there. And so, they try to formulate a plan. Like, okay, keep this door open, because if it closes, we can't get out, because, like, it's a fire escape door. Can you keep it open? Yeah, gotcha. And so then they all go to the gun store there, alert the zombies, and end up climbing through, save Nicole and the dog there. And then it's pretty much like, oh, it's time for them to get out there. And then, of course, the douchey Playboy guy that was supposed to keep the door open is not there. But it did lead to one of the funniest moments that I was laughing at the scenario, is the fact that whenever the whole group is like, escorting Nicole out and trying to get to safety there, and CJ sees that good old boy, I can't remember his name, falls and breaks his legs, and he, CJ's again a different person. He's like, oh no, I'm gonna save ya. And so he's trying to take out as many as he can, and so he's dragging him, and then he's like, you know what? He just hands the guy with a broken leg 2 guns so that way he can focus on dragging. I thought that was a very well thought out scene. That was something I was like, okay, that's funny, and I could see that happen. He just go, and I also like that CJ had the courtesy just to shoot the good old boy in the head, like whenever he's getting torn apart, because he's like, yeah, you don't need to go through this.
Right.
Again, just a lot good character moments there. Just highly infuriating that it all happened because of a dog. I mean, have you ever played Dead Rising? The whole outbreak in the mall happens. No, that's Dead Island.
Oh, okay.
Dead Rising is about zombies in a mall.
Yeah, okay, I've seen it played a lot. It's where you can do all kinds of funny things and like ride on a tricycle and all that kind of...
Yeah, that's exactly the one. But basically, the zombies get... Okay, spoiler alert for people that haven't played Dead Rising by now, for whatever reason. But the whole outbreak in the mall occurs because a woman wants her dog. She's like, my Madonna, get out of my way, and fights off these huge burly people just to get to her poodle, and then surprise, she died. But that's what it reminded me of. I'm just like, these people
Yeah.
are just causing so much pain and suffering. And I will give props. I will give props. Like, whenever they see Nicole crash into the building to go get it, they see Andy was like, oh, wait, Andy's writing us something. Because, like, again, he had talked on the walkie-talkie, like, yeah, I got bit pretty bad. It hurts. It hurts. And then you would think, like, wouldn't they have told him, yeah, you're pretty much done for. Why would Andy think he's able to escape unless they didn't tell him that for whatever reason? But I did love the scene where it's like, wait, Andy's writing something. Because they've been talking the entire movie through the marker board, and he picks it up and he was just smearing blood.
Yeah.
And again, they kind of hint at the beginning, like, maybe the zombies are just doing what they muscle memory tells them to do, like they're used.
Yeah, because someone was like, "Why did the zombies come here, like to the mall? Because there's just zombies all outside the mall." And people are like, "Maybe it's instinct." And then the cops like, maybe they want us.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was like, oh, that's a pretty well thought out scene. I can appreciate that, but there's a lot of frustrating stuff. And then whenever they head back, and again, the door is closed, and so then it ends up being main girl who opens, which again, I don't know why she wasn't at the door either. But anyways, they run back to the bus, and CJ's like, what the hell, man? And he's like, what? Like, just shrugging, and he's just sitting on the bus there. So there's just a lot of moments there that are definitely like, it started getting more questionable towards the end.
Right.
Like, I think they did a pretty good job of like nailing down the, oh, if you were trapped in a mall, what would you do there? But whenever it comes to actually having to make decisions, it's like, and I know we've been saving the cream of the crop of spoilers for this film. This is solely the one scene that I was pretty much, I'm like, nope, which I was not expecting. I don't know about you, Aaron, but this part, the whole sequence, it's not even just one moment. It's the whole sequence that I'm like, what in God's name?
It started out as good writing and became just campy, like super genre, like let's see how disgusting we can get type shit.
Oh
yeah.
See, you can't.
Yeah, it's the guy, I don't remember his name, the sort of the arrogant guy, and his partner Luca, and she has been very close to giving birth to this baby for a long time. His sort of motivation has been not only to keep her safe, but to bring a child into this world to give it a better life than the one he had. It's it's a nice, it was he's like one of the couple characters that was developed well. And he he's trying to take care of Luca no matter what, and his child no matter what, and he knows that she's been bit, and for whatever reason everyone else has deja vu and doesn't want to check on her also for days, and so she's getting more and more sick. And so he's like strapped her to a bed in this baby store in the mall, which he's also covered like the glass doors with curtains or whatever, because she's going to go into labor. And he's like tied her down all limbs, and he's created this little like gag for her such that when she turns and he's on her bedside and she's like, you're gonna be okay, you're gonna be fine, you're gonna push, and she's like kind of starting delivery, I guess, but it's hard to tell if she's birthing this fucking baby or if she's just turning, but she's definitely turning.
Yeah,
she turns into a zombie. Of course he doesn't have the gall to kill the love of his life, so he like puts this little gag on her to keep her from biting him. It could have just ended there, and somebody could have found him and been like, what the fuck? But then he goes down to her stomach where his little baby is, and it kicks, like babies do. And then it keeps kicking. Honestly, I thought we were going to get an alien moment where it was going to burst out. But no, as soon as she started turning, you'll remember I said, a zombie baby? And you were like, I hope not.
That's so good.
But sorry guys, it was zombie baby.
Oh.
This baby like gets born, and kudos to them. I guess they didn't skip on the gruesomeness of childbearing, because like blood spurts out of her end. They don't show that, but they show the blood like shoot out. And like it starts to come out, and he like wraps it in a towel, and that's whenever the old lady mom of the group comes in, and is like, "Are you guys okay?" Sees dead, or like not dead, but like zombified Luca, and he's holding this bloody baby thing in his arms. You don't really get to see it. You just see like it's swaddled up in the cloth first, and then him, the arrogant guy, and she's like, "Oh my god!" And the arrogant guy goes, "It's a girl."
Yeah, like
Lucas starts freaking out. Old lady pulls out a gun, shoots her in the head. As soon as she does, wait, right before she does all this, she pulls out a gun, points it at Luca, because she's like, "This is a zombie right there." And the guy goes, "You trying to kill my family?"
That is the moment he is checked out mentally.
Right.
He is not there. He has snapped.
I actually, with the exception of the baby part, liked all of this to this point. And then it started getting ridiculous whenever she pulls the trigger, blasts Luca in the head. He instantly pulls the gun, shoots her like 2 times. This is all in slow motion, by the way. She's fallen to the ground, swivels her gun, shoots him 2 times. He shoots her back another, and I was really expecting, "Ooh, what you say?" to start playing. Because it was that level of just dramatic, like, and it was just like a shootout that in real time apparently only took like 3 seconds, because they were actively falling during this entire time. But in movie time took like 45 seconds of them blasting bullets, and they showed the casings hit the ground and the bullets fly out of the gun. It was ridiculously just like they put all their budget into this part, I guess. But oh man, that was something.
I think that was the moment that you were just like nonstop laughing at, with how
it was just
ridiculous.
Absurd.
Because again, you would not expect a shootout of this proportion,
right,
with this arrogant dude and this elderly woman.
Yeah, I was like an old white woman and a guy who steals TVs blasting each other. It was just like, what the? It was wild. And then the rest of the crew, they hear all these gunshots. They come, guns loaded. They go in, and they're like, "Oh, shoot the old lady in the head," because she's like sputtering blood dramatically, like, "I'm shot." She whispers out, and she was like, "Oh no, she died of a gunshot wound. She's not gonna turn."
How do you know? Had anybody died of?
Well, like, Anna's a nurse, I guess, so that's the reasoning. Is she like saw that she was shot and she was holding her gun on the ground. And although they didn't, nobody looked slightly to the right to view the guy on the ground with his gun, like, until they had their dramatic moment with they didn't stop to be like, well, who shot her in this room that we know Luca and the other guy is in? Is he still alive and gonna shoot us? Was it a zombie? And if it was, is it still in this room? They didn't bother to do any of that, because they were all crouched over her body for like a minute and a half. And then they look over and they find him, and they find the little baby, and they're like, they gotta pick up the baby and unveil it, and it's zombie baby. It's like, and then they show a baby execution, which is awesome, I guess. If you want to watch a baby get shot in the head, if you're into that, then this is the movie for you. But it's just a baby, and they show Anna, of all people, put the gun to his head. And then thank God they at least have the tact to cut away and just play a gunshot noise. But you watch a baby get executed, it's it's a little disturbing. So
yeah, that whole thing I was very much nope about, because again, it's kind of a messed up situation there, where this dude really wants his baby so badly that he's willing to tie up his wife to the bed there, and she's in so much pain, just due to the fact that she's sick and she's going through childbirth there. Not to mention, I don't know if they did this on purpose or it's just the limit of their effects there, but like those kicks, that was a strong kick there. That was like, you know, like rubber against the stomach, and I was just like,
well, like the first one was like normal, because you can, I mean, you can see when a baby kicks whenever they're that far along, you know what I mean? But like, yeah, then it was like horror movie levels of just stretchy belly.
And again, like that he already was prepared for her to turn into a zombie, to have that gag ready and just tie around her. And he's basically just intending on living this way forever, just living in his happy corner with his zombie family there. But yeah, zombie baby, I saw it and I was like, oh my gosh. But then, like I said, I mean, it makes sense that they would shoot the baby, because they're like, well, clearly we can't keep this thing there. But it's still weird to be like, you know, oh, can you name anything remotely interesting that happened in Dawn of the Dead 2004 remake? They shoot a baby.
Yeah. They shoot a baby.
Yeah, like it's just.
How's it gonna bite and infect you? By the way, it doesn't have teeth. Just leave it alive. Have a cute little zombie baby pet.
Once it starts getting its first tooth in, though. Yeah. Sorry, baby.
Sorry, baby.
Oh my gosh.
Why wouldn't they just like ramp it back up and drop it off the roof? I mean, come
on. Oh my god, dropping babies.
Save a bullet.
I feel like I'm back in high school with all the dead baby jokes I heard. Oh my god.
What's the difference between a pile of dead babies and a Ferrari?
Oh my god.
I don't have a Ferrari in my garage. I still remember way too many of those for some reason.
I fortunately do not.
I have good memory for things that I wish I didn't remember. So.
I can understand that. I guess I've been blessed to not remember a lot of the dead baby jokes, nor do I. That is like something that should be just sealed.
Just the bad joke. Like I don't remember any of the funniest jokes I've ever heard. I can't tell you, but I could tell you like 14 Chuck Norris jokes right now.
Yes,
and none
exactly.
Of them are any good, you know.
It's just miraculous how the human brain works like that.
Yeah.
But that was the one scene. That was the one scene that I'm like, no, during, because then I guess major props to them for coming up with for a unique scenario again. I can't really say any other zombie movie I've seen has done this exact thing before.
I'll give them credit for the balls that they have to go places. Because that honestly would have been, like, critically speaking, artistically speaking, dramatically speaking, good scene, good motive. Yeah, of course, she gets bitten. She's hiding it for everyone. He doesn't want to kill her. He's hoping for the best, that she will recover somehow miraculously. And, of course, she dies. She could have even died in childbirth. And then, you know, and then, but the just zombie baby in general, she should have died before she had the kid, or it should have been a stillbirth or something. Something should have happened where, you know, it could have still been awful and gruesome to watch and very, very sad, and he could still have his brand of psychosis, but you didn't have zombie baby and zombie baby execution. There's like a million routes you could go where you didn't have that, and it would have still been good.
Yeah. I don't know. That scene's pretty defining. Like it's.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say I was glad that it was in there, but
if all you're going for is memorable, then sure. But like, there's sometimes things are memorable for a bad reason.
True. But that was definitely one heck of a scene I was not prepared for.
Yeah.
In the slightest. Like, you know, humans getting their guts torn out, everything. Yeah, sure, I was prepared for that.
Right.
That level, no, definitely, most definitely not. Aside from that, any other points you feel like we need to hit on or anything else like that?
Man, this is definitely one of those movies that has so many moments that you could just talk about forever. But I feel like we've hit the biggest ones.
Yeah, I definitely feel so. Again, you know, even though like Aaron and I, you know, didn't rate it super high, you know, again, like we mentioned, it is definitely a very interesting film to watch. And so I see exactly, as mentioned before, why Dave chose this for us. And I'm glad, because in all honesty, I would have never watched this movie otherwise, mostly just because I was like, Oh, Dawn of the Dead has a remake?
Yeah.
I have no idea about that.
And it's a really interesting blend of, like, yeah, a lot of it is derivative. A lot of it is, you know, I've seen this in zombie movies before. I've seen this in over-the-top silly action movies before. But so much of it is actually unique, and I give them points for creativity. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because, like, if it wasn't for those moments there, like, again, those Eminem,
In
you
the
know,
trail mix,
yeah, those moments there, it would have been harder to sit through because it is a long movie.
It is.
It definitely is a long movie. And so the fact I was able to sit there and watch it, and again, have those few characters I did kind of grow an attachment to, like, watch, you know, go through this film, I think it's still pretty good props there. It's just unfortunately not really going to be the first film that I'm going to rush back and watch there. But yeah, I mean, definitely check it out if you love zombie films, haven't seen it before. Otherwise, if you don't want to see babies get shot, then I guess you can avoid this film.
Yeah, if that's an emotional trigger for you, then skip that scene for sure.
Definitely just click over that. You're not going to miss anything important for sure. Yeah, but aside from all that stuff there, I guess we're going to be talking about the next movie we're going to watch. You're going to get teased, boy.
Yeah.
Okay, so this may shock you.
Okay.
But we will be visiting a sequel.
Okay.
In this episode.
Another one?
Yes. And we haven't really talked about this film too much. But it's a film that we're viewing the sequel to almost a year later.
Okay.
And it did, I believe, come out in the 80s. Let me just confirm that because I don't want to be a liar. Let me go ahead.
80s?
Yep, 80s sequel.
Almost 1 year ago?
Mm-hmm.
And it's important you're saying sequel, you're not saying two. Is this a third installment of a movie?
Nope.
Okay,
You were right on the 2.
It's the 2.
Yep, so, yeah.
We're watching Rocky 2, baby. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you know it, Adrian.
I'm gonna win this time, Adrian.
Yeah, and it did come out in 1981.
Okay.
And it's
I'm
very
guessing-
timely.
I'm guessing Halloween 2.
You are correct.
Woo!
Yes, we are going to be seeing how our boy Michael's been doing since the last installment there. So, first off, thank you all so much for listening to this episode. And we'll see y'all again next time when we're popping the scary with Halloween.
Sequel.
Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @CoalkirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're popping the scary.